Welcome to a budget deck tech video for Varinia Lich Queen, an Esper 4 mana cost zombie wizard. Whenever you attack with one or more zombies, draw that many cards, then discard that many cards, you gain that much life. For 2 mana, exile 2 cards from your graveyard, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. The most common strategy with Varinia is a reanimator strategy. You discard some really expensive creatures like Nessa and then you bring into action for only 1 black mana and you will lose 7 life. That's a good strategy. You could also discard down Dread Return. You sacrifice 3 zombies to flashback cast this from your graveyard to bring this into play. You could also use Animate Dead, Necromancy. You could also discard down Elish Norn. That will turn all of your 2/2 zombies into 4/4 zombies. So she's a beat down potential plan and will also hurt your opponent's creatures. Or you reanimate and bring Rasaket into play. And then you win through some form of Rasaket combo line. The big problem with the reanimator strategy is that it's not really on a budget. It is a really good strategy and Varinia is a good commander that could go for that strategy. But I want to build a budget deck, so instead of going for that reanimator style, I'm gonna do something different. Let me show you 2 cards I will build my deck around. Mystic Forge and Mirrodin Besiege. Let's actually read Mirrodin's Besiege, because it's gonna be the main focus for this deck. For 1 blue, 2 generic, a total of 3 and blue enchantments. As Mirrodin Besiege enters the battlefield, choose Mirian or Phyrexian. Mirian, whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature token. Phyrexian, the ones we're actually gonna go for at the beginning of your end step. Draw a card, then discard a card. Then if there are 15 or more artifact cards in your graveyard, target opponent lose the game. This is how we're gonna win the game. Now let's look at Mystic Forge, a 4 mana cost artifact. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast the top card of your library if it's an artifact core or a colorless non-land card. You can tap and pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library. I would like to mention that this is a semi-competitive deck on a budget, and these combos aren't really that amazing. Mirrodin Besiege is a really slow combo and you only kill 1 player per turn, while Mystic Forge Storm is something that could fizzle. But this is a deck that you could upgrade quite a lot with more expensive cards. For example, you could tweak the deck towards a reanimator style like I showcased in the beginning of the video. Or you replace the commander we currently play with these 2, Tymna the Weaver and the Seeker Adept. Now you might be asking why I'm not making a deck tech video on these 2. The reason is Tymna is not on a budget. She's actually quite an expensive commander. Let me show you a 3 card combo with Mystic Forge that will draw your entire deck. You have Ethereum Sculptor, reducing the casting cost of artifacts by 1. There are other versions of this card, by the way. Then you have Sensei's Divining Top. Tap this thing, draw a card. This goes to the top of your library. Now you may cast the Sensei top by paying 0, putting this into play, repeat, and draw your entire deck. There's a big problem here and why we don't actually have this combo inside our deck. That's because Sensei's Divining Top is not on a budget. It's a really expensive card. But this is pretty much how you could upgrade the list. In the end, this combo isn't really that good, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm gonna include Mystic Forge as a good card in general. Or let's actually rephrase that. Let's see if we can turn Mystic Forge into a card that will simply draw our entire deck. In this game, there is a bunch of cards that will reduce the casting cost of artifacts. You're looking at 3 of them right here. Let's say you have 2 of these, 2 random whatsoever, and you have Mystic Forge in play. Every artifact on top of your library on a CMC cost 2 or less will be casted at 0 mana. So now we can pretty much just sit there and cast artifacts from the top of our library. And then we win the game with Aetherflux Reservoir, also an artifact so you can cast it from the top of your library. And then you build a really high storm count by casting some more artifacts from the top of your library. And then you win the game once your life is above 151. Have you ever played Varinia yourself before? Or have you ever played against the Lich Queen? You might have noticed that she's really good at actually gaining life. So getting her life above 51 or getting to something like 55 or 60 life isn't that impossible with this commander. So, for example, if you run into this, what do we actually do now? No, it's not a joke. Varinia and her zombie tokens, and even with 80 flux reservoir, you could blow up and kill the player controlling a stacks card, getting rid of that player, and then storm off and win. Even if that player doesn't have a stacks card in play, we could use this and Varinia's life gain capacity to shotgun that player out of the game. And Varinia is quite good at filling your graveyard with cards. And if we build a deck that is quite focused at having a lot of artifacts in it, I think we're gonna have the Mirrodin Besiege active quite consistently. So we are looking for artifacts with stacks, lockdown interactive abilities, preferably on a really low CMC cost. For example, Piffing Needle. And also, Sorceress Spyglass, Torpor Orb is a good mention, and Dampening Matrix. Now I did choose to have Dampening Sphere hanging around here, because this is a good example of an artifact you shouldn't play inside this deck, because this is a storm deck, and it's going to be impossible to storm if you have Mystic Forge and Dampening Sphere together in play. You could include and go for the Dampening Sphere anyway, because you could tap this thing to get rid of this from the top of your library, but I don't think that Dampening Sphere is a card that you should include inside this deck. This brings up another really important topic, that stacks cards are in general quite situational. For example, Torpor Orb is extremely good when it's good. It's useless when it doesn't affect any of your opponents. The same thing can be said about this thing, Mindlock Orb. So Mindlock Orb is going to prevent every player from searching their library. This could lock down us if we really want to search our library. And sometimes it doesn't really do that much against our opponents. This thing usually is really good. It's gonna lock down our commander's ability, but I think that's fine. Sometimes you go up against the graveyard decks, and sometimes you don't. The good part, the extremely good part about Varinia is that she can fix this. She has a looting ability. I usually call this loot boxing. That is something I'm going to be talking about in the future, I hope. It's basically, the term is this, that you draw a bunch of cards, and the cards that you don't need, for example, suddenly you don't need Torpor Orb in this match up, in this player pod, then you use her ability to discard it. She replaces the stacks cards you don't need with hopefully other cards you do need. Then of course we're going to have some mana ramps, so we have some talismans, and we've recently just gotten a new talisman, so there are more talisman and more ramp capabilities for budget. That's good. We also have the 3 signets. They are good. They are increasing our mana capacity for only 2 mana, and they are fixing our mana for us. We also have Fellow Stone, Ever-Flowing Chalice, and Mind Stone. You can also sacrifice Mind Stone to draw a card, increasing the artifact ratio inside your graveyard for Mirrodin Besiege. We also have Executioner's Capsule. Now this isn't actually a good card, but if you're playing on a budget and you don't have anything better, then this is an artifact. It's gonna synergize with your deck. You also have the Mishra's Bubble. This one isn't actually budget, but it's something you could afford, I guess. It's a good card for the deck, because you cast it for 0, you sacrifice it, and then you draw a card later. So it's a 0 mana cost cantrip that will fill your graveyard with artifacts. That's gonna function inside our game plan. We also have the Conjurer's Bubble. So for 1 mana, you can sacrifice this and draw a card. This is good during the Storm Run with Mystic Forge. Let's say that the top card of your library isn't an artifact. You crack this thing, and you draw the card, whatever it is, and suddenly the next card might be an artifact. Cards like these are good when you want to make sure that your Mystic Forge Storm Run become successful. Nihil Spellbomb is really similar to this. You can crack it and pay 1 black mana to draw a card, doing the same thing as Conjurer's Bubble. Let's talk about Varinia's ability in general. So there are a bunch of cards in this format that does something from the graveyard. For example, Wonder. So if this is in your graveyard, and that's the cool part, you don't have to cast it, just discard it with her, and if you control an island, all your creatures will gain flying. That's cute. That's casual power level. It's not really that good in competitive environments. But if you are starting to feel like you need a deck that have a beatdown potential, and you wanna get a little bit more evasion, you're running into hate bears, etc, etc, then Wonder is a card you could consider for fringe and strange metagame. It's not a card you should just ignore. It's a card that you should probably skip out, but in some cases this is actually good. Here I have a card, on the other hand, that is actually quite good, Forbidden Alchemy. So this is a card draw card. You get to look at the top 4 cards of your library in instant speed, by the way. You choose one, and the rest goes to your graveyard. We wanna fill our graveyard, so this has synergy with our game plan. The other cool part about it is it has a flashback cost. Oh, alright, so the flashback cost is actually really expensive. 7 mana is extremely huge. But the part where you could discard this and then use it later in instant speed is actually quite functional. I like that. But I have a card that is really similar to Forbidden Alchemy, but a lot stronger. Flash of Insight. And this card is actually quite good. 2 mana, then X. Look at the top X cards of your library, choose one, put it into your hand, and put the rest into your bottom of your library. The extremely strong part of this card is the flashback cost. 2 mana, then exile any number of blue cards from your graveyard, and that becomes X. So you fill your graveyard with a bunch of cards that are blue, and you use your counter spells to interact with your opponents, and then you cast this thing in instant speed during an opponent's end step to gain some extra card draw value. That is actually quite good. We also have a really weird tutor, Mystical Teachings. It's a really expensive tutor. 4 mana, instant speed, so that's good. Search your library for an instant card or a card with flash. Reveal it and put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. This also has flashback for 6 mana, so that's a lot of mana. But if you discard this, then this is a card in your graveyard that could be considered hanging around in your hand for later big value use. And of course, I already think you know about Deep Analysis. But if you didn't know about it, it's 2 mana, pay 3 life, draw 2 cards, flashback from your graveyard. That's good. Here is another card, not a flashback card, but quite synergetic with your commander. So discard a bunch of cards with her, cast Shadow of the Grave. Return to your hand all cards in your graveyard that you cycled or discarded this turn, giving you a lot of value for other cards that you discarded. So we've looked at a bunch of blue cards and we've looked at some black cards. It's time to look at a white card. And you're gonna like this one. It's a really, really strange card. It should be green, but for some reason it's white. Planar Birth. Sorcery. For 2 mana, put all basic lands from all graveyards into play under their owner's control tapped. Usually, you don't go up against a lot of other opponents that discard their basic lands into their graveyard. You could do that, draw into this, cast this, and return all the discarded basic lands back into play. You're gonna group hug your other opponents a tiny bit, but I think we're gonna help ourselves the more. If you're curious to see my complete Varinia Meridian Forge decklist, there's a link in the description below of this video. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like what I do and you wanna support me, consider sharing my videos or even checking out my Patreon page. Also, purchasing cards from the TCG Players website using the affiliate link down below will also help the channel grow. So a big thank you to all of you.